of my podcast, TV radio show with Jess FM. I'm super, super excited. I'm a little nervous, but you guys, I'm a mess, so we're just going to be in this together, okay, if anything goes wrong. So basically, my podcast tonight is going to be talking to Trish. We're going to be talking about a little bit about my story, the things I've been through, the hardships, the challenges, but also how everything I've been through can be used for good, and how I just want to use my story and my testimony with the life I've lived. I'm 25 years old. I'm Cree Indigenous, and I just have this power in my heart that I just want to share with people, that no matter what you go through, you're not alone, and that you can help others with your pain. This is actually a 4-part series with Trish. She'll be on my show for the next 4 episodes, and we'll be doing a 4-part series basically on how to turn your pain into power. Trish helped me back in May of 2020 when I was going through an extremely hard time. And she just really gave me hope and helped me change my perspective on things that I thought there was no hope for. So I also just want to give a quick shout out to a sponsorship, just with the mic I'm using, all the setup and everything. His name's Chris Malindo. I found him on Facebook Marketplace here in Edmonton, and he hooked me up for a really good price with 2 ring lights, the mic right here. So I just want to thank you, Chris, and I'll put his details on my Instagram after the show. So I just want to talk to you guys about how I know Trish, first and foremost. I'm actually best friends with her daughter, Kyla. Hi, Kyla, if you're watching, I love you. And I never actually met Trish for probably till about 5 years ago. And we got really close just through her daughter. And now we actually have our own kind of friendship apart from Kyla. So I'm super grateful for that. Before I get into my story, I just want to talk about Trish just for a second here, so you guys kind of know who she is, so she's not just sitting here. So Trish has her own website. It's called awakenyourworth.com. She's a life coach. She basically, I'm just going to let her explain it to you guys in a nutshell, and then I'll get going on kind of my story and how she ties into everything and how she helped me get onto the other side of everything. So go ahead, Trish, tell them a little bit about yourself, just a snippet, so they can kind of get the whole picture before we dive in.
For sure, yeah, for sure. Like Jess said, I've known her for a while, and I've had the interesting pleasure of watching her journey, and it's been a really incredibly difficult one. And I think anybody that has observed you from afar has felt the pain of your life, and just the trauma that your family and friends and loved ones have really gone through, watching you go through the turmoil of really the trauma that you've been through. And it's so easy for people to judge, right? That's the first thing that we want to do when we see somebody acting out and struggling with life, whether it's addiction or any sorts of problems. And it's very easy to point a finger and say, look at that mess. And the truth is, it's in all of us, right? We all have different messes that we hide from other people. And Jess's journey was very public. So I think that, whoever's watching this, there's probably a lot of people that know you and that don't know you. And I can assure you that she has been through probably one of the most painful journeys that I personally know of as a human being. And, what's beautiful about your story is just your love for life still, and your compassion for people. And, someone who, has also been through trauma. If you look at anybody who's really in the healing profession, we all have a background, right? We don't get into this industry because we've had a cushy life and everything's been roses. It's generally out of necessity that we come down this path. And what I've seen in Jess, especially lately, is she's really blossomed into a completely new person. And just the wisdom that comes forth from our traumas and our challenges is really what the greatest gift of being a human being. It makes us resilient. And, I think I would encourage you to, and to be honest, I really don't even know half of your story. I just know kind of hearsay of what I've kind of heard and maybe witnessed off and on. So I'm interested in knowing the fuller background of what you've been through. And I encourage everybody to really listen with an open heart.
Yes.
Because, you know, when we look at someone who's been through a lot of hardship, you know, it's an opportunity for us to open our heart with love instead of judgment. And that's where all of our healing takes place. So I know that what Jess is going to share is really is going to inspire all of you to know that our stories don't have to end at the shitty chapter, right? Mm-hmm. That there, you know, for each and every one of us, there's something that is waiting for us to greater understanding, greater compassion for ourselves. So without further ado, I'm interested in hearing your story, Jess.
Oh, I could listen to Trish talk all day long. Thank you so much, Trish. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically, for anyone who doesn't know me, there's so much to my story. You know, I used to be really ashamed of who I was. You know, I obviously call myself Jess the Mess because I just think it's the perfect explanation for it's okay not to be okay. You know, like I might look like I have it all put together on social media, and, you know, that couldn't be further from the truth. I think everybody has their demons, their struggles, and I think we should be, you know, talking about it way more. When I grew up, I didn't really have anyone around me talking about the things that I went through. Therefore, I did not know how to communicate. I didn't know. I thought there was something wrong with me. I always thought, you know, I must be the problem. So basically, I'll just start kind of just the pivotal moments in my life that I now realize through years of therapy, you know, years of treatment centers, years of hospitalizations, years of just really dark moments for me. But now I'm slowly getting onto the other side. I still have very hard days, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not ashamed anymore. And I think that's one of the most important things I want to share today is, you know, if you're ashamed of your past, you need to really let that go. And, you know, there's no time frame on healing. And if you were to tell me like that I would be doing a podcast right now in front of 65,000 plus people, airing out my dirty laundry, there was, you know, a time 5 years ago when I didn't even think I was going to be alive. So it's just a huge blessing. I feel really honored to be connecting with each and every single one of you, that you're even taking your time out of your night to listen to me. So I'm Jessica Baker. I was born October 28th, 1995. And I have a brother named Jeffrey, and I was an identical twin, but she didn't make it. Her name was Jewel. And so I'm 25 years old, and pretty much had a pretty good childhood. You know, my parents raised me and my brother amazingly. They love us unconditionally. You know, without them, I would not be alive today. I know that for a fact. So back when I lived in Sherwood Park, from the ages of 6 to 12, I was molested almost every day by a neighbor. And I didn't know that's what it was. I think, you know, when you're a kid, you don't understand what that is. And I completely had disassociated it from my life up until 2018. I completely erased it from my memory, and I forgot it happened, right? So that's a huge piece to my story now, looking back, going through just the years of counseling and therapy that I still continue to do. I just wasn't ready to face any of that truth in my life. It impacted me in every single possible way. You know, I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. I love watching YouTube. I watch a lot of interviews of just, you know, addicts, recovering addicts, homeless people. So many people go through sexual abuse as children, and it profoundly impacts your life, like in the worst way possible. For me, I can only speak for myself. Looking back now, I can understand why I was a people pleaser. I could never say no, because as a child, I had to say yes in order to protect myself. So those are two really key two really important keys to why I people pleased, why I thought I always felt I had no control. We have false beliefs growing up. Trish will get into that a bit later. I truly believed subconsciously that I had no control over anything in my life because it was taken away from me at such a young age. So going through elementary, junior high, high school, I was bullied. I thought I was a happy kid. I got to go on vacations and all this kind of stuff, but I always just kind of felt like there was this hole. Like there was just like something was wrong with me. And I just didn't really quite understand that until obviously later on in life. Sorry, I need to take a drink of water. This is a mouthful.
We will allow that.
Probably there's just so many components to my story. So that was pretty much like my first traumatic experience, multiple obviously throughout a span of 6 to 12. When you're you're a child, you're growing. Those are pivotal moments where your brain is being nurtured, and I was nurtured in all the best ways possible at home, but I was also going through severe trauma on the side. And I want to express to anyone that might be going through that, or if they might know someone, they think it's their fault almost. I didn't even realize what was happening to me was wrong. And the first thing I thought, well, am I going to be in trouble, when you're a child? And I'm assuming that's why I didn't come forward. When trauma happens to a person, it becomes very distant. Through the years of counseling, I have vivid memories of it, but I can't go back and say, this is exactly what I was thinking at the time. So I'm just speaking from my experience. But, as I hit 12 years old, I started to get into the things that all adolescents I feel go through: drinking, experimenting. And I started drinking at age 12, which, to sum it up in a nutshell, my life completely spiraled with alcohol and drugs later on, about when I was 18, 19 years old. But I first tried alcohol at the age of 12. Both my parents are recovering alcoholics. They have been sober over 33 and 32 years. I never grew up in an alcoholic home. I am Indigenous, so, genetically, I was predispositioned already to addiction. And I just want people to understand that addiction is a disease. It's at some point does become a choice, but unfortunately that choice was taken away from me, the second I took that first sip of alcohol. And somewhere along the way, I crossed the line that you can't go back. And it's taken me a long time to accept that fact for myself. And I still struggle. I'm not going to lie and say, I have X amount of years of sobriety. That's just not my story right now. Every day is a struggle, and I'm still fighting. And I think that's the most important thing, that I've never given up. Because, it's not easy. Recovery is not easy. Being sober is not easy. And, I still try every day, and, I'm sober today, and that's all that I can count on. And that's all I can thank my higher power for. So yeah, basically at age 19, I graduated high school, all that kind of stuff. I danced my whole life. I'm a singer-songwriter. I have some music out on all platforms. I'll tag all that after this show. And I got to do a lot of things, a lot of kids don't get to do growing up. So I learned guitar, piano, voice lessons. I really channeled all my pain into my creative side. And by the grace of God, I did do that, because now I get to do it every day now. And I'm so glad that I have all that kind of stuff in my back pocket that I'm now able to do, because for so long I never thought I'd be able to do music. I just never thought possible. I didn't even think I was going to live. So, that's just a whole nother blessing in itself. But probably the moment that changed me forever, when things started to get really bad for me, would be I was 19 years old. It was in 2015, and I was gang raped. I was under the influence, so I am a survivor of sexual assault as well. And that moment changed me just forever. Like, it still affects me, but I've done the healing that I needed to do. I don't want to get emotional, but I totally thought it was my fault, and I never came forward. And still to this day, they're running free. And I've just had to accept that, and I've had to just forgive them for me to move forward. And that was a really hard thing for me to do. And ever since I came public about my gang rape, I've had hundreds of women come to me on social media, just telling me their stories, and it truly breaks my heart that so many women, men, children go through abuse like that. And I just didn't want to be silent anymore. I didn't want to give those, I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I kept using, I wouldn't say I was using that trauma as an excuse to keep drinking and doing drugs. It's just I was lost. I was broken. I was so broken. And the only thing I felt that I could do was, drink and do drugs and go out on the weekends and just like hide from the world. And I think everyone goes through, a party phase. Like, I'm not saying, that's the wrong thing to do, but I got caught up in it, and it was seriously killing me slowly. It's killing me fastly. I had I've been in 7 treatment centers, so 2015 to now 2021. I've been hospitalized over 25 times. I've been to psych wards. I've had 4 suicide attempts. By the grace of God, I'm still here. I've been to 7 treatment centers. I just said that, but I say that because, I remember going to my first treatment center, and we were all sitting in a circle, and they asked me, "Is this your first time in treatment?" And I was so full of pride back then. I thought I knew everything. This was in 2018, and I said, "This is my first and last time in treatment." And I just remember that clearly, like thinking I knew what the heck I was doing, and I had no idea. Like, I feel like when you think you have a plan, like, you don't. Like, I just have learned to live life on life's terms, one day at a time. And it seems to be working for me as of recently. And just to be grateful for, like, having another day alive. So, yeah, back to when I was 19, that's kind of when everything hit the fan. And I just trickled down. For people that do know me, that knew me during that time, it probably looked like I had it all together, but I really didn't. I couldn't keep a job. I was institutionalized for 2 years, from 2018 until 2020. I actually just got out of my last treatment center October of 2020. And there's just been so much, more trauma that happened due to drinking and alcohol, and alcohol and drugs. I was using that to cope. I didn't think I was doing that at the time. I thought I was just doing it because it was fun. And so much trauma came from trying to just hide, and I was so ashamed of who I was. I thought it was my fault what happened to me in 2015, and the fact of the matter, it isn't. And I think society needs to change their views on that. I didn't ask to be gang raped just because I drank alcohol, and I think our justice system's getting better, but even I've had family members, tell me, well, if you didn't drink, it wouldn't have happened to you. And I really want to change the narrative to that, because it's not okay. It's why women stay silent. And I stayed silent for 5 years, and my life blew up in flames. And, I'm not taking any responsibility for that, but trauma affects women deeply, men deeply, everyone deeply, and everyone copes in different ways. So, trying to think what else to say here. Just like the changing moment for me in the positive, there's so many different ones, but it would have been finally finding out my mental health side of things. I was always just told I was an alcoholic, and that's what I was, that's all I am, that's all I'll ever be. And so I was just stuck in this cycle of drinking, trying to get sober, relapsing, drinking, trying to get sober, relapsing. And I just couldn't get out of that cycle. And it was just this never-ending like black hole. And so, yes. Sorry, guys. Trisha's helping me. She's giving me little notes.
Well, actually, they're notes for me.
Oh, they're notes for her.
Things that I want to say that that you're triggering as you're sharing.
Oh, okay.
So you're
awkward.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You're like,
this is me, guys. So have a laugh. But what was I saying? Trish, help me. What was I saying?
Well, you're saying that the turning point of your life.
Oh, okay, yes. There's not this one moment where I just woke up one day and I'm like, I'm fixed, you guys. Like, I want to live. There was never a moment for me. There still hasn't been a moment. But there has been a lot of different events over time where I didn't want to live. I was just like, if this is life, I do not want any part of it. Like, screw this. I didn't sign up for this. And the whole self-pity game. And little did I know until, I found out all this after I met Trish, was like, I was pretty much creating my own destiny with, my beliefs about myself and how I thought about myself and how I viewed the world. I was just attracting. Our next episode next week is going to be on manifestation and how to like manifest, your life, the life you want. And I was just so negative. I was so broken, and it served a purpose at the time. But what really was the changing moment for me would have been in May, June of 2020. I was hospitalized for probably the 18th, 19th time after an alcohol overdose, drug overdose. And I was in the emergency, and usually they just, get me in there, they kick me out, they fill me with fluids, and they're like, okay, bye, like you're just an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. But luckily, this doctor saw that there was something else going on, there was something wrong. So they admitted me to the mental health unit, emergency unit at the Misericordia. And that's when I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I had never heard of it before. I suffer from many other diagnoses. Just to name a few, I have ADHD, which I just got diagnosed with at my last treatment center. Anxiety, bulimia, which is in remission. Anxiety, depression, PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD back from the 2015 event, and I thought I was just alcohol was my problem, like with all those other factors. But when I was diagnosed with borderline, it made so much sense to me. Just to give you guys a nutshell of what borderline is, I don't like the word borderline personality disorder. I think it's just the wrong term. I would call it emotional dysregulation disorder. And it's actually like formed from trauma. So having trauma as a young child can onset borderline personality disorder. Basically, it has a lot of success when you do the right therapy, and that's what I've been doing. And just finding out that it wasn't my fault anymore, like that was a huge relief, knowing, because there was times where I was like, am I crazy? Why can't I stop drinking? Why am I doing this to my family? Why I don't want to drink? Why am I drinking? Why am I, addiction took me down a really dark path. Like I started, there was moments where, I sold myself for money, and it took me a long time to realize, like, I thought it was okay. I just was worth nothing. And it was a really scary time. And, I just didn't, I thought it was normal. I just thought that's how life is, and once I started to really try to get sober and I couldn't, I just kind of thought I was crazy. Like I thought I was the 1% that was never, like, I'm never going to get this. I'm just going to die this way. And then when I found out there was more going on with the borderline, I actually admitted myself to a treatment center in Victoria, BC, where I got the help for my borderline, my PTSD, my trauma as a child. I had never dealt with it before up until August of 2020 to October, and kind of getting out of there, out of that treatment center. I kind of started blossoming. I kind of started realizing, that maybe I do have a shot at life. But it hasn't been easy, like I relapsed the day after I left treatment, and I was actually sexually and physically assaulted by an Uber driver. So now I have a lawsuit going on there, and I have possible trial with that. And I bring that up just because, just to show you guys, like, it's not perfect, like life is not perfect, like I got out of treatment having all these just like high expectations for myself. Never thought I was going to drink again. And, life comes and hands you these curveballs. And I could have let that take me out, but I didn't. I got right back on the horse, and I'm still, I still have my struggles today, months after being out of treatment. But I'm here and I'm alive and I'm grateful, and like the hugest thing is that I'm not ashamed, like if I was ashamed, I would not be on here talking to 65,000 plus of you telling you, all this that I've been through, but I'm doing it because none of us are perfect, and we need to, the opposite of addiction is connection. I have nothing to hide. Like, people that really know me. They love me. I used to care what people think, to a certain degree I do. But as long as I'm being my authentic self, and you don't like me, that's fine. Like, I'm not here to please you. I'm here to be who I am. And so, yeah, since I got out of treatment, life has been happening for me, I might not have, X amount of months of sobriety. I have had slip-ups. Trish called them divine appointments, I think, or something like that. Divine. So it was.
You have to give it a better name, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to associate it as failure, because you're just reinforcing a behavior that is further hurting you. So yeah, we talked a lot about that, but anyway, I'll let you continue.
Yes.
I'm
That's not I'm just gonna go like this.
Yeah, it's like it's pixelated or something.
Yeah.
But that's okay. They can hear. Hopefully
you can hear us.
Hopefully they can hear us, because that's the most important part.
Yeah, I need to break you guys. The story's exhausting. Try living it though.
Well, I'm just going to intervene here and just say that really what you're witnessing right now in Jess is a healing, because something happens that's really powerful when we come forth and we can openly share in a safe place. Obviously it's taken you a while to get to this place where you even have those insights, and that's really what healing is really self-awareness. And what we hide is what hurts us.
Yes.
And obviously, I never recommend to anybody to openly share something if they're not ready for it, but clearly you're ready for it. So
yeah. Like, for me, my like Trish said at the beginning, my struggles were very, very public to, I want to just say the general area of where I live. Everything was blasted on social media, which, I now see at the time people were just worried about me and all that. But at the time it was, it wouldn't have been my first choice. I kind of got outed about a few years ago about my addiction. And so I lost a lot of friends. I hurt a lot of people. Most importantly, I hurt myself. And I really didn't think I was hurting anyone, which is the funny thing. I thought, poor me, like if people could only see what I'm going through. But I really didn't want to help myself, I wasn't ready. I had to go through a lot of pain, which now I can see is definitely going to be used for good. Which is why I'm doing this whole TV radio show in the first place. But what was the last thing I was kind of telling you guys about? Yeah, so basically since I got out of treatment, October 2020, like the hugest turning point I want to say too is for me is my partner. I met someone, I fell in love. He has had his fair share of struggles. We go back, our story's kind of cute. I'm not going to get too far into it. I don't want to embarrass him, but yeah, he's the love of my life. He definitely saved me. And I don't want people to get caught up in, codependency, or I really don't care what people think about it. It's just, I I never felt lovable. I never felt like anyone could love me. And, he accepts me for everything and I accept him for everything. And without him on my side, like, I honestly don't think I would be alive to this day. Like, people say, there's this like unspoken rule in recovery, you're not supposed to date in the first year and blah, 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 blah. And, I just think it's the case, like, there's no rule actually that says that, when you have a soulmate, you have a soulmate. And when you have someone that, like, is going to love you until you love yourself, it's definitely saved me. There's times since I've been out of treatment where I have had slips with alcohol. And I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not ashamed of it. And when you have someone that has a lot of sobriety, a lot of recovery, is definitely one of the hugest inspirations I know from where he's come to where he is now, that I can lean on. It's definitely changed my perspective on life and helped me. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, having a partner, when you're struggling. And when people say, you need to know who you are first before you get with someone else. And like, I don't look at my partner for happiness. I find that within myself. But when you have someone that loves you unconditionally, vice versa, it's so much easier to create this life. And it makes it worthwhile, like, who wants to be lonely? Who wants to be alone? And I was alone forever, and I was okay with that. I was totally okay with that. I was in a lot of abusive relationships, and it's just because where I was at, it's what I was attracting essentially, because I didn't love myself. I didn't want anything to do with anybody. And so that was a huge turning point for me as well. Was just finding someone that I could just be my authentic self around, whoever that was, because I'm still figuring it out. But it's a really good feeling just to be accepted, like, that's all we really want in life, is to be accepted and loved. We don't want to be judged, and it's really cool when you can find, your other half essentially, that just is there for you through everything, and he's been through a lot of dark times with me, let me tell you, in the short amount of time that we've been together. And it just makes us stronger. And, love is a choice, I think, too. Love's not easy. I see that with my parents. They've been together 30-some years, and it hasn't been easy all the whole way. But, like, they made that vow, they made that commitment, and they haven't given up on each other yet, and it's kind of crazy that I've found that. And it's just been really helpful for me to keep going every day when I have someone that is on my team, on my side in that way. So that was definitely the treatment, and that has been the hugest. My mental health, finding out my borderline, and therapy, and just having the will to live again was that, and also having my partner. So I think that was a huge, huge moment for me. So that's a little bit about my story. I'm sure in this episodes to come, though, I will be sharing more. But yeah, I kind of want to talk about with Trish what she does, who she is, a little bit about her story, and why she got even into this profession that she did. Like she said earlier, when you go through such darkness, which we all do to some certain extent, we have to find a purpose for it, because if you don't have a purpose for all this crap that you went through, what's the point? What's the point of my story if it's not going to help someone? Like, that's the only way I could have found something to live for, something to hold on to, something to move forward, was I'm not the only person that goes through this stuff. Like, I'm not important. I'm not special. Like, this is just life. Life throws you things. And, I'm just so thankful that I found something inside me, God, to help me get through it, to now be able to talk about it with all of you guys. And hopefully, if even it helps one person tonight, that's all I care about. Like, I could die tomorrow and be happy. And I truly mean that, because no one connects to perfection at all. We connect to vulnerability. So, like, I want to be that vulnerable person that's just kind of airing out all her stuff. So I'm going to let Trish kind of explain to you guys her website, who she is, and then we'll kind of talk about what she did for me, and she'll ask me most of the questions on just kind of like you know, what she taught me when I had a session with her, and just the continuing relationship that we've had. So we'll just get into that now.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That was powerful.
And tired.
I have no doubt that you've helped a lot of people with your deep honesty, and really, you know, I can't remember if I knew all of that. And, you know, what it highlights for me is just that, you know, if you backtrack all of those challenges that you've been through, it starts with trauma in our childhood. And, you know, I think anybody who's been through any sort of addiction or any kind of problems, it's, you know, there's a lot of situations in our childhood that shape who we are today. And I think that we're in a good place. You know, mental health is getting better. We're understanding the role that trauma plays and how it ripples and how it affects us with addiction and so forth. And, you know, what's so interesting is Jess's, you know, her situation started with trauma and, you know, a very rebellious, you know, relationship with alcohol and drugs and a lot of things that were very public and very, a lot of people would judge. And the interesting part is, you know, my story really was, you know, very, very completely, totally different than yours. But mine started with trauma. But I manifested it and really responded to it in a very different way. And, you know, in a nutshell, you know, I think that every human being has been traumatized. To be alive, there's trauma. You know, we have this illusion, we'll look at our lives and say, well, I grew up with loving parents and, you know, food in my belly and a roof over my head, so I had a good life. And, you know, I think that what we do is we misinterpret the value of emotional health and emotional stability. And, you know, when our psyche is forming and we've been violated either sexually or we have parents that, you know, that are dealing with their own emotional challenges and they don't have the ability to care for our needs, it leaves us feeling that can be a trauma in of itself. Right? You don't have to have, you know, you don't have to be sexually molested to have a trauma. And, you know, much like you know, my experience, probably to everybody who knows me would think that I had a completely different experience than I did. You know, I've manifested my trauma in a very different way than Jess has, and mine has been with perfection. It's really been about wearing that mask and never letting anyone know that I'm hurting or that I've been through pain. And much like, you know, when you were referring to your, you know, the neighbor who was sexually molesting you, and the, you know, there's this part, and also the, you know, the rape that you had, there's this part of us that wants to, doesn't want to acknowledge it, number one, because sometimes our psyche can't handle it. So we just downplay it and we go, oh, that wasn't that bad. And my circumstance was when I was 13, my father committed suicide. And, you know, long before he committed suicide, there was a lot of trauma in the way that it wasn't just like I lived in the happy family and one day my dad decided to take his life. He struggled with a lot of trauma from his childhood. And the interesting thing is trauma gets passed down from generation to generation. So my dad struggled with not wanting to live, and he had a hot spot, and his hot spot was when he got too stressed, he wanted to check out. And he had a specific ritual that he would do, and he would walk downstairs to his gun cabinet, and he would get his rifle, and he would walk upstairs and out the back door, and he would go into our garage. And me and my mom and my siblings would wait in front of the window and just watch to see if he came out. We'd wait for the bang, is he coming out? And that happened several times. And, you know, when you're a young child, seeing a parent who doesn't want to live can affect your psyche in a very deep way, because that's the deepest part of being human is we want to live, right? We all fight to live. So when you see a role model who wants to die, it affected me extremely adversely. And I was the youngest in my family. So when I was 13 years old, my dad actually, it was the day before my very first day of school, grade 9. And my dad came to my bedroom and he knocked on the door. He came in and I was getting ready to go play with my friends. And he sat down on my little twin bed and he motioned for me to sit down next to him. And he said said a sentence that I'll never forget. And he said, I just want you to know there will always be a special place in my heart for you. And I did what every 13-year-old would do. And I said, yeah, me too. And I jumped up and I gave him a hug and I ran out the door to play. And it was probably 15 minutes later, I was sitting on my girlfriend's lawn just a few blocks away, and my brother's car pulled up. And the door swung open and I could see his face was red and tears were streaming down his face. And he was too far away for me to really hear the words that he was saying, but I could see his lips. And I saw him mouth, Dad killed himself. And, you know, your life changes in those moments. And, you know, what happened to me in that moment is it shaped my identity. Mm-hmm. And I became a 13-year-old therapist in that moment. Because what happened to me was I truly believed that I was responsible for his death. Because he came to me. Mm-hmm. He didn't come to anybody else in my family. He came to me to say goodbye. And it wasn't actually until my own daughter was 13 years old. And what happened to me was,
I'm supposed to check the comments.
No worries.
Sorry.
Be focused now.
Yeah.
So what happened to me was, you know, I looked at my daughter at 13 and I realized how young and naive she was and how she was a child. And it was part of my waking up. I was like, oh my God, of course I wasn't responsible for my dad's death. Yeah. But what I did is it changed my personality in the way that I became that person who was continuously searching my environment to see if everybody was safe. Mm. Because at that time, you know, my mom obviously was devastated after my dad's suicide. And, you know, she'd come home every day from work crying. And, you know, it triggered something in me that, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my mom next.
Right.
So I altered my behavior. I became not a 13-year-old, but I became a parent to everybody in my family. And I took on the responsibility of caring for everybody's emotional needs. And it was a massive burden.
Yeah. And
I developed a personality of deep perfection because I, you know, even when my dad was alive, I couldn't be that rebel because, you know, we all relate to one another through our feelings, right? Like we obviously have languaging so we can communicate that way, but we're really feeling the energy in our environment. Mm-hmm. And with my dad, it was one of those things where you feel the discord in your family. So for me, it was being the perfect kid. Don't ruffle anything because you might put your dad over the edge that day. And yeah. So we all develop our personalities in relation to protective patterns. Mm-hmm. We learn ways to cope, and mine was perfection. And it was so deeply ingrained in me, much like you, how you disassociated and you felt like you were to blame. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was to blame, but I also felt like I had to hide my dad's suicide. Mm. Because I felt that if people knew my dad killed himself, that they would immediately judge me. And, you know, I think it was from the age of, obviously the people in my neighborhood and close friends knew what happened, but anybody who I met after that, I would lie to. So I would create a socially acceptable form of death. And I prayed actually that nobody would ever ask me about my dad. It was the most terrifying topic. You know, Father's Day, I would lock myself up, so don't anybody ask me about my father. And the blessing I had, and this is what I'm going to tie in that I think your viewers really need to understand, is that what we hide controls us. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 7 years that I lied. It wasn't until I was 22, or I guess 9 years after my dad's death. When I was 22, I ended up going to a personal development seminar. It was 3 days of, I didn't know what it was, but my soul pulled me there. Yeah. And it was in that seminar that I actually shared. I think there was probably a couple hundred people in the audience, and I got enough courage to tell people what the truth was. And, you know, it's funny how our mind can trick us. And there was a part of me that was so afraid. I literally felt like I would be stoned, like people would just and it's so interesting. I look back at it now. Obviously I was young then, but I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that, like, that part of my mind actually really believed that. Yeah. And I saw something totally different. So when I shared with these tender, loving people, I saw nothing but, you know, their hearts open up for me and seeing the pain that I was in. And that weekend seminar changed my life. And I remember I was married at the time. My husband picked me up. He brought me there and stayed the whole weekend. And I drove home a completely different person. And I was no longer carrying that burden of hiding that part of myself. And it was there that I got hooked on personal development, because that became my bottle. That became my drug.
Yeah.
Because I got so much relief from realizing that there are, and this was 30 some years ago. So nowadays, I mean, we're living in a completely different world. Mental health, just the whole understanding of the psyche is, I mean, we're, 3 decades can change things a lot. We really understand the mind. And anything that we keep a secret and that we feel shameful about is what powers us. And it's, I think it's a big part of what's played a role in your life and shifting you. Because I know the conversation that we had, it was brief. Actually, it wasn't even for coaching. We just got together.
Yeah.
And, I truly believe that I'm on this planet to support people, and I can feel deep into someone's soul. And if there's any opportunity I can give to share wisdom that I think will help someone. And, we were chatting about something else, and I couldn't help but offer my love and support. And I think really the nature of the conversation that we had that day was, saying that I wholeheartedly believe is everything happens to serve us.
Yes.
And, if I, could go back in time, and, the blessing that I had is a lot of people didn't have trauma like I had. But I'm, obviously it happened. I can't change that. Yeah. So we have to, find the gold, mine the gold in those circumstances that occur in our lives. And I look at it, and I'm, it opened my mind to really understand that I wasn't flawed. Right. It was the first time I actually understood that I actually have control of my mind, because I had these thoughts that were racing, and they were so harsh and evil. And, my biggest thing after my dad died was my number one goal in my life was to not kill myself.
Right. Wow.
And that was just the underlying thing, for a lot of people, it might be, I don't want to take a drink. I don't want to disappoint my family, or we all have these areas that our mind goes to. And for me, it was just, let me not kill myself. Because I'd seen that was and I had such a tender hot spot for emotional pain. If I got pushed over that edge, the first thing where my mind would go, and I don't know if you ever went there, but it was like, I'm checking out. I can't do this.
Oh yeah. All the time.
Yeah. And I don't, it's funny, and I just want to say this because this is really powerful. I had a conversation with someone the other day. We were talking about suicide. And they said, people just don't, they don't think about their children or who they're hurting. And the first thing I always say to them is, I know that you've never wanted to kill yourself. Yeah. And they always say, no, I haven't. And I said, trust me. Yeah. You do not have the faculty in you to actually even think about. No. It is one of the deepest, darkest, most painful things to want to end your life. And my heart goes out to anybody who's ever been in that situation, because it's painful. And what I want to, I know we're getting up on time here, but I just want to say too that, that was 30 some years ago, and it directed the course of my life into the field that I work in now. Yeah. And I have applied. First of all, I got into coaching because I went through a divorce. I guess it was 11 years ago. And, I had kept my trauma at bay. I'd had enough tools that I could kind of navigate being a mom and a wife. And then when I went through my divorce, and, I'd met my husband when I was 15. So I had never been alone in the entirety of my life. I didn't know how to pay a bill. my kids feel that. Yeah. You realize what, how inept you are in certain areas. Yeah. And it pushed me over the edge. And I was back into that deep part of fear and insecurity. And I had that hot spot many, many times if I want to kill myself. And I did come close to actually taking my own life. And I just kept working through.
I just want to touch on when you say the hot spot, for you wanted to kill yourself, that was what was always on your mind, right? You're the biggest fear, and therefore you were kind of what you taught me. It's like the more you think of something, the more.
Well, the more you resist something, the more, and we'll definitely
get into that later on.
Yeah. I mean, today I think that, you know, it was important for your viewers to understand is where both of us come from.
Yes.
And the wisdom that comes from going through experiences that make you, that push you over the edge. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what I've learned through my experience and by doing the work that I've done, and I've worked under so many different brilliant people, and just, it's really about us understanding the operating system of our psyche.
Yeah.
And what our emotions represent. And once we have a better understanding of how our mind works, then it's like we get the owner's manual to drive the car. Yes. And we never got an owner's manual, right? No. It's trial and error. You bump, bump and get bruised, and it can be incredibly painful. But I will definitely say with 100% assertion that what we learn from those experiences is who we become.
Yeah.
You know, we can't become who we are without being sculpted by those situations. And, you know, I always have a lot of people always say, you know, you have such deep wisdom. And I say, well, it was sculpted.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't sit in front of a television and, you know, watching television and get sculpted. That's life sculpts us.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, by the grace of God, the divine, whatever source you want to call it, you know, you're still here. I'm still here.
Yes.
And I believe that, you know, it's those of us on the planet who have been through the worst of the worst that, you know, we go searching for these answers. And there's nothing more fulfilling than helping people. Mm-hmm. Right. I think, you know, like you really touched on it, how, you know, it gives your pain a purpose.
Yes.
And it allows you to support other people and to help other people know that first of all, you know, your deepest, darkest hours they're leading you somewhere. They're leading you to your most incredible divine gifts. And that's really a big part of what I work with. You know, I'm, you know, anyone I meet, you know, everybody comes to me for different reasons. I have entrepreneurs who come who want to, you know, amp up their business. I have people who have a background of codependency, people with eating disorders, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. The truth is it's all resistance. And, you know, if we can, the more that we can learn to love ourselves and not judge ourselves is really the pathway to really living the lives that we are meant to live. Right. So.
Totally. Yeah. Like, I just think, you know, just to quickly touch on me and Trisha's conversation was, you know, she pointed out to me the way I was speaking about myself. And she was probably, you know, I'd probably heard it before, you know, like, you know, you're worse enemy and, you know, this and that. And no, I was literally like speaking like death into my life. I didn't know how to speak life. You know, I was just surviving. I wasn't living. And for her to even just talk about, you know, we talked about like our episodes called like turning your pain into power, and she told me it's like a pendulum. Is it the pendulum? Yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to explain it, but if I screw it up, she'll explain it. But it's like a pendulum, you know, it swings back and forth, and without all, you know, the crap, all the darkness, you know, there's no light. You know, it sounds so cliche, but without all of, you know, that sculpts you into who you are. You know, that's what makes us, you know, authentic. That's what makes us, I'm not saying you have to go through this extreme trauma to be this, you know, amazing person, but I truly do believe, you know, like all the significant pain she went through, like look how much she's helped me. And, you know, she's just making an impact on each person's lives because she's been through something. And yeah, it's just, it's insane. So yeah, I don't know if I explained that right.
Well, you did. I mean, it's pretty much whatever swings one way has to swing the other way. And really, it's, you know, feeling is one of the greatest gifts of being a human being. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we tend to like the good feelings, and we want to resist the per se bad ones. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, there are no bad feelings. Because if we didn't feel the whole spectrum of, you know, the heavy ones, the sadness, you know, all of those those ones that humans do not like, we could not know the opposite. Right?
Joy. Yeah.
You know, happiness does not exist without sadness. You know, health does not exist without illness.
Yes.
You know, lack doesn't exist without, you know, the abundance lack thing. So there's, you know, I think that a big part is we have to understand that struggle actually is, we're wired to struggle. We are, you know, and you know, we're going to talk about it more in our other episodes, because I have some really like powerful stuff to teach your audience.
We're just getting started.
That's going to change your life. So
yeah.
So hopefully, you know, I'll end off here, and then you can wrap it up, because I know we're on the hour. But it's really, you know, Jess's story is profound. My story is profound, and everyone who's watching has just as profound of a story. You know, and if you don't think you do. Then you know, there's healing. There's healing, and you know, the journey of life is a continuous evolution of really coming to a place of having deep compassion for what all of us have been through.
Absolutely.
You know? So I just want to acknowledge you for being so brave, and you know, it's a different story. You know, I'm a lot older than you, so me sharing my story, and then obviously I work in this profession, so I've shared my story before, but for someone who is, you know, in her 20s, and peers, you know, our friends and our peers are an important part of our life, and to be so vulnerable can be a hard thing for a lot of people, but I think you really get it. You get it that actually vulnerability is power, right? Yeah. The more you can be open and you can take off those masks of hiding, and again, I recommend that you always, you know, do it in a safe place, right? Yes. Don't, you know, it's healing is a journey, and
you can't force it. You just can't,
and
unfortunately.
The timing is always right. You know, and obviously the timing was perfect for you, because, and I'm excited to watch your journey, and, you know, because you should be really proud of yourself for what you're doing, and I know a lot of people will benefit from it.
Thank you, Trish, so much. Oh, I'm so excited for our next 3 episodes. Basically to wrap it up, you guys, I've seen some of your comments on the live and the show, and I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. I just feel so grateful, seriously so grateful that, like, even, you know, if 10 people were even watching, like, I just think that's so awesome. And I'm just so grateful just to see, like, what's going to happen in the future with this. Like, I don't know where this podcast, TV, live show, whatever you want to call it, is going. And I just want people, you know, you heard most of my stories tonight. And Trish was just kind of touching on, you know, that I get the vulnerability thing, and the truth is, you know, I'm no one special. Like, I'm really not. I just realized, you know, I was never living for myself ever. Not once in my life. I always was so self-consumed with what others thought of me, and I was miserable. Like Trish touched on, I didn't want to live, you know. And now, as I become this woman, you know, the woman that I'm becoming, you know, I'm at 25. You know, you kind of just, like, one day, like, it hits you where you're just like, if I'm not living for myself, who am I living for? Do you know what I mean? And I don't care what, you know, like, I want to help people. At the end of the day, that's all I want to do. And I just want to connect with each and every single one of you. And if, you know, my story can, like I said, help one person, then I've done something right. So I'm really, really excited for our episode next Sunday. We'll be right back on here on this platform. And we're going to be talking about a little bit more in depth the steps that Trish takes, you know, her clients through, you know, manifesting your life, you know, turning all that garbage, I guess, in your life into your power. Because I just think enough is enough. I don't want people, you know, living in shame anymore. That's, like, my number one thing. I just want everyone to be free from themselves, you know, bondage of self. Like, we just all deserve to be happy and joyful. And if I can help in any way, you know, I'm just one person, but at least I can go to bed at night knowing, like, I'm doing my part, you know. And so that's all I really have to say for this week, you guys. I'll read all your guys' comments. My manager, I guess, had texted me and showed me you guys were commenting, but I don't want to be on my phone. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Trish, everyone. So much.
My honor.
I'm so grateful. So
my honor.
I'm going to turn you guys off now, but
night, everyone.
Bye.